Hello and welcome to the Turn Zero podcast, hosted by the Snapkeep crew. My name is Al, and I'm joined by...
Jake.
Alex.
And Ryan.
Today we're talking about game changers, more specifically how you can take out some of the game changers that you're running and sub in some cards that you may not be as aware of. So the main takeaway here is not to be bad actors and trying to, sneak in a bracket 3 deck just because it technically doesn't have any game changers, but more so to make that conversation a little bit easier. Make sure that you could just say, hey, I'm running 3 game changers, I'm bracket 3, and it runs like a bracket 3 deck.
Yeah, for sure.
It also breaks up the monotony of deck building so that you're not using the same cards over and over and over. That's why we give some more suggestions. That way you kind of have a little bit more to pull from that try to give the same effects and just kind of make your gameplay experience a little more fun.
Or varied.
One of the benefits of Commander is being a singleton format is that all your games aren't the same. But if you're playing the same cards every single game, they could be kind of similar.
So we're going to hit it real quick and we're going to jump into white.
Yeah, with Drannith Magistrate.
Yes.
What a card. Yeah, what a leader. So Drannith Magistrate is 1 and a white for I want to say it's a 1/2 that says you basically can't cast spells from anywhere other than your hand. Notably, this shuts off commanders and cards being cast from exile, so Cascade or just Red's Impulse effect, it shuts those down. And it's kind of one of the only things that does that. Yeah. So if I were to replace this, pull it from a deck, and try to find something that's in a similar vein, I'm going to look for light stacks. So the first card I'm going to look at is Containment Priest, which is a very similar effect, but it only stops non-token creatures if they weren't cast, I want to say. So things that just plop them onto the battlefield, sneak attack type effects, or show and tells that would get exiled. But other cards I would look at are Soulless Jailer, which stops things coming from the yard, and Hushbringer, which shuts down ETPs. It's kind of a meta call, honestly. So, Drannith might be a little oppressive, but these guys have homes in many stacks over the years, and they can have one in yours too.
A little easier palatable,
Agreed.
It doesn't turn off commanders, for the most part. The next card that we're talking about is Trouble in Pairs. So 2 white enchantment. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead, but that's not why you play it. The reason you play it is because whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card each turn, or cast their second spell each turn, you draw a card, which means draw a lot of cards.
Sometimes up to 3 in a turn.
It triggers on Sneeze, Blink, tapping the board.
Just breathing.
If that one guy flicks his cards.
So I focused on more so replacements that are in white and replace card draw. So the one that everyone knows about, super easy, Mangara, the Diplomat, 3 and a white, 2/4, legendary creature, lifelink. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, draw a card. And then the juicy piece, whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. It's Commander, they're gonna be drawing cards.
Yeah, true.
So that can kind of replace that effect. The only thing you're really missing out on is when they draw their second card a turn, which is a big miss.
Yeah, it is.
Speaking of which,
Still get to draw something though.
we also have Smuggler's Share. So 2 and a white enchantment at the beginning of each end step, draw a card for each opponent who drew 2 or more cards this turn, then create a treasure token for each opponent who had 2 or more lands enter the battlefield under their control this turn. So this one was really hot when it first dropped.
Yeah, I remember this card.
Everyone poo-poos on this card. Every time I still cast it, it's amazing. Because I'm not running it for the treasure token. The treasure token maybe goes off once.
Sure.
Maybe someone ramps in their turn.
Someone's playing green, maybe.
But
I wonder if it got poo-pooed on because it came out so close to Trouble in Pairs.
I don't think so.
I think there was a good amount of time between. I think people tried it out and then they were like, it's not good.
It doesn't trigger enough.
People are like, people can just fetch on other people's turns to get around the treasure thing. And it's like, the treasure's not why you're running the card.
That's not why you want it. It was released around a lot of card draw. So if you want repeatable, that works. There's also Lorn of the Third Path, which is 2 and a white. The main thing we're concerned about here is you tap, you and target opponent each draw a card. So you have to subscribe to those effects where you're like excited about
Secret rendezvous and
Yes.
things
Yes,
like that.
wedding ring.
giving your opponent's cards, which is a drawback. However, you get the upside of being able to destroy a target enchantment or artifact when it enters, and you get a body.
That's pretty good.
Speaking of which, we also have Cut a Deal. 2 and a white sorcery. Each opponent draws a card. Then you draw a card for each opponent who drew a card this way. Probably the best version of Secret Rendezvous, depending on how you view
It's
it.
opposite Siphon Mind.
Yeah, I like that card a lot, actually.
Yeah, I think if you want that burst, it can get you there.
Siphon Mind. Pick a lane, Jake. Pick a
Play 'em
lane.
both.
Or if you're white spell slinger, it could also help you out.
Ooh.
And then finally we
Juicy.
have Wedding Ring. So if you want to draw some cards, just plop a Wedding Ring on your favorite blue player, and then you're off to the races.
True. You don't have to play with Rhystic Study to get a Rhystic effect.
Who
Just
is
marry 'em.
marrying Al?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know somebody's running their card draw, then perfect. The drawback is it is symmetrical. They also get a ring. So till death do you part is how that one goes.
Yeah.
I will preface that most of these cards subbed in for Game Changers will have an inherent downside or not be as efficient.
Yeah.
But don't see it as an
Yes.
inherent downside. See it more of like not a restriction, but more of like an expression of deck building sort of thing.
For sure.
And that's the kind of generically good white card draw that you can run. Of course, if you're running a white weenies deck, you know how to draw cards. You're not worrying. You got your welcoming vampires. You got all sorts of effects like that.
Mentors of the Week.
Specifically, Enduring Innocence is probably the best version of that effect because it
card. Love
stays
that card.
around
Ooh, yeah.
after it dies. So white has come a long way in the last 5 years.
It sure
Went
has.
from bottom to top, arguably, behind
Yes.
green. But still.
So chill out. You don't need trouble in pairs. You'll do just fine.
I'm going to talk about 2 older white cards now. So my first card on the list is going to be Enlightened Tutor. Enlightened Tutor, 1 mana instant. Search your library for an artifact or enchantment card, reveal it, then shuffle it and put that card on top. There are a lot of different kind of tutor effects. I tried to find ones that were kind of true to the source in Idyllic Tutor, which lets you just search for an enchantment. Search for Glory is going to be a snow permanent, a saga, or a legendary card, which is a little bit of a brighter scope, but ends up being 3 mana. And then Steel Shaper's Gift is equipment only and 1 mana. And so I felt like those kind of encapsulated the I'm searching for this one specific thing. And I feel like a lot of the decks that I would run Enlightened Tutor in, I have specific things that I'm trying to find, not necessarily like, oh, I'm searching for either an enchantment or an artifact. It's I run this so that I can find this specific enchantment. I run it so I can find this specific artifact.
Yeah.
A very recent printing that kind of goes right in with it is the Bright Glass Gear Hulk. Narrows the search down a lot, considering it's 1 CMC or less, but is still just artifacts and enchantments. But those were kind of the ones that came to mind for me pretty immediately, and I guess outside of the Gear Hulk are all significantly less expensive than Enlightened Tutor,
Sure.
Oh yeah.
dollar-wise.
But not mana-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough to beat.
Sure is.
What about Serra Sanctum?
So
Oh,
Serra
boy.
Sanctum.
Yeah.
So up until now, we have been looking for cards in the same colors. Serra Sanctum being a land, a little bit different. It's a legendary land. Taps to add white to your mana pool for each enchantment you control.
A little busted.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, Serra Sanctum is like a $300 card. It's because there's not just another Serra Sanctum out there. It's slightly off color, but I found Sanctum Weaver is in green. There are a lot of Selesnya enchantment decks, enchantress decks.
Yeah,
So
big
that was
theme
kind
for
of what I found that gives you the same effect, but Serra Sanctum very much this is the effect, this is what does the effect, and here you go.
Yeah, we'll see that with a couple of the other lands on the list too.
Yeah, you're in rough shape.
for sure.
So we got a next card, which is Smothering Tithe. It's 3 and white enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If that player doesn't, you create a treasure token.
Why has it got to be 2, man?
It's also
Why
one of
couldn't
the
it just be
reasons why
1?
It's the reason why white's so good.
Yeah, it was for the longest time.
Yeah, so this card is very, very efficient at what it does, and it is also efficient at giving your friends a headache, because you
So
always
true,
have
yeah.
to ask if they want to pay the 2. So there's 2 reasons you could be running this card. One is for the inherent ramp that it gives you. Treasure is mana, or you could be doing it for treasure synergies. So if you're doing it for treasure synergies, you're in white, then Monologue Tax is an okay replacement.
It's not great, though.
It's kind of dog water.
Yeah.
It's whenever they cast their second spell each turn, you create a treasure. It is 1 mana cheaper, but it is just tough. It is tough.
I've had that enchantment sit on the field before and make me 0 treasures all game.
Yeah.
It very much is.
It's really rough.
We play a lot of Commander where it's like, hey, I got 6 mana, I'm casting something for 6 mana. Like, we like to play big things.
Yeah.
We like to play on our curve, and
Yeah. But we are the format for double spelling too, so it's not going to do nothing all the time, especially if you can drop it early, as people are still deploying mana rocks and stuff like that. However, if you are running it for the ramp in your mono white, you need a white card. How about a colorless card? There's 2 that I'd like to run past you. One is Dousing Dagger. I'm still going to be singing its praises. Sure, you got to give one of your opponents 2/0/2 plants with Defender or whatever, but you have a commander, and that commander can swing. It can get into the red zone, and you might as well get a land that adds 3 mana
That's a pretty good land.
any one color.
I'm a
while
believer.
you're
I'm a
at it.
believer. I'm a believer.
Yeah, so as long as you don't have a very strong land destruction meta, you'll be all right.
if you do run Lotus Field,
Yes.
And if you don't run Demolition Field.
Or you could be running this other ramp card, which is sort of Hearth and Home, also kind of monetarily expensive card. However, if you like the fact that your opponents really can't do anything about Smothering Tithe, sort of Hearth and Home will probably get you there, because your creature will have protection from green and white, which means you can probably get into somebody. You'll be able to blink your creatures. You're already in white, so it's probably a pretty blinkable color. You like your ETBs. And you also get a land every time you connect. So
Yeah, that card's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
yeah, it's really good.
Very good.
I'd run this over like sort of the Animist or any of the like effects for that. If you're trying to ramp, it might as well be lands, especially when you're in white. So if that's really the only reason you're running Smothering Tithe, you're going to have a lot more fun with these cards, or just the traditional white catch-up ramp package. Which means if you have less lands, then you can ramp. Less lands than an opponent, you can ramp with certain cards. So the easy ones to point to is Knight of the White Orchid.
Land tax.
Land tax, correct. Archaeomancer's Map. There's also, you could be running bounce lands to help that effect. There's Desert Scout. So there's just a lot of good options for ramp in white, so you're probably not hurting, and if you're in green, then just ramp that way. You don't need Smothering.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need Smothering Tithe.
they just made white the catch-up color.
Yes.
And it does it so good.
Yeah, but that's because it's always behind and has to catch up.
Yeah. So that is white. Now we're going on to blue. With
See you guys later.
Alex. We
Take
got
a
a
nap.
pretty spicy one for you.
Yeah, so Cyclonic Rift is a wonderful card. It's a 2 mana instant that lets you just return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. You can overload it for 6 and a blue, and to overload you may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change target in its text to each, so return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Cyclonic Rift, very, very good card. Makes sense that it's on this list. However, it is probably the easiest to replace.
Oh, yeah.
So, here we go. I have together Spectral Deluge, Aetherize, Decoy Gambit, River's Rebuke, Selective Snare, Whelming Wave, Wash Out, Slinvoda the Rising Deep, Evacuation, Aether Spouts, Devastation Tide, and Displacement Wave.
Whoa.
Jeez.
And that's not all.
Yeah, I guarantee you there are more.
Didn't say wave goodbye.
Yeah.
Or the phasing of Zalfir.
a lot of these are based in the fact of some of them bounce your creatures as well. Some of them bounce only attacking creatures. They are going to be slightly more specific than a Cyclonic Rift, which is why Cyclonic Rift makes the game changers and these cards do not.
Yeah.
But bouncing cards is not new to Blue. It's something that's been going on for probably at least 20 years at this point. Someone who knows more than me will have that exact number, but it feels like at least 20 years. Snap has been around for quite some time. And so there are plenty of ways to bounce a lot of things. Yeah, unsummon. And a lot of these, personally, I run things like Whelming Wave because it will kind of leave some of my creatures alone. I also run Slinvoda the Rising Deep for the same reason.
Big fish. But
there are
Huge
just
fish.
so many different options to replace your Cyclonic Rift with.
Yeah.
Like, the too many good options to replace it with.
Yeah.
Save your money. Go out and get a Whelming Wave. It's probably like $2, if that.
Yeah.
Yeah, good budget alternatives.
Yeah.
For sure.
You don't need it. It's not very fun anyway. It's
Yeah.
like a Craterhoof Behemoth or an Insurrection type effect. It just is a big swing in one direction.
Yeah.
You'll have more fun without it.
Talk about big swings in one direction. Let's talk about Expropriate.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Zane.
So we're talking about what? We're talking about Expropriate. Expropriate. How much is Expropriate?
9?
9 mana. It's 9 mana. Council's Dilemma.
Yeah.
Where starting with you, each player chooses time or money. Each time vote is for you to take an extra turn. Each money vote is gain control of target permanent that player controls. And oh boy, if you've ever been on the receiving end of an Expropriate, you want to concede on the spot. It accrues the caster infinite amount of value because they can choose first, so they're usually 9 times out of 10 choosing time, so
Yep.
they get at least baseline an extra turn.
Holy shit, I was right.
So to kind of replace that in your deck, I know extra turn spells are on the bracket situation already.
Yep.
But if you're looking to play and kind of refurbish your Expropriate into something a little less powerful, there's definitely extra turn spells for cheaper with Temporal Manipulation, which is a 5 mana extra turn spell, as well as Nexus of Fate, which is 7 mana, take an extra turn, and then shuffle Nexus of Fate into your deck. But there's also, if you're looking for more of the money aspect, where you're just looking to take your opponent's things, there's just control magic.
Yeah.
You know, there's just control magic. There's bribery if you want to get spicy with it, which is just pick an opponent, you look through their deck and take a creature from it, and you control it now.
Yep.
So
Inevitable Betrayal does
Yeah.
the same thing.
yeah,
Right.
oh
Just
yeah.
on a little bit of a clock.
Yeah, so extra turn spells are kind of hotbed of coals, kind of you tiptoe around it in casual Commander.
Yeah.
But I think you can still play maybe an extra turn spell here or there for the cheap.
After that, it looks like we got a lot more blue magic to go. Al, what do we got?
That's for sure. So we got everybody's favorite.
Oh, boy.
Free counter spells.
My favorite.
So Force of Will, 3 blue. Did you know that was on the card? I didn't. Instant, you may pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand rather than play this spell's mana cost, counter target spell. So by paying 1 life and pitching a blue spell to the exile zone, you get to counter a spell. Now, I'm going to talk about our second game changer at the same time because the replacements are kind of the same, which is also Fierce Guardianship. Once again, 2 and a blue, but you're not going to be spending that, though you can if your commander's not on the field.
It can just be a cancel.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's an instant, of course. If you control your commander, it's free. Counter target non-creature spells. So it is a little bit more restrictive, but man, is that hoop easy to jump.
One
Yeah,
more mana for a
that's
negate.
fine.
It's a negate that costs 3.
Yeah. So those are very, very efficient free magic spells, and usually you are casting free counter spells for a couple of reasons. One, to save yourself from losing the game by preventing another player from winning, or more importantly, protecting your game plan free of charge. You're about to win, you're about to combo off, or you just need to protect yourself from a big board wipe when you have a full aggro on the field. So let's start with the free counter spells that you could be running that you probably already know, which is Flare of Denial.
Yep.
It's 1 blue, but you're not going to be paying that. It's an instant. You may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Counter target spell. So this one has no restrictions. You could just sacrifice a non-token blue creature. It is a little bit hard.
Yeah.
But it is pretty easy to
You're already running blue.
do late. Yeah, you're already running blue.
And if you're gonna die, if you got your commander out.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, it's not going to be super aggressive early turns, but by the end of the game, you'll probably have some sort of creature that is reducing the cost of your instants and sorceries, or even have
sacrifice that baby Jace, counter that spell.
And
Yeah.
especially if it's to protect a board wipe, would you rather lose your whole board or sacrifice one of your creatures to save the rest of your board?
Yeah, easy peasy.
It's the trolley cart problem.
Yeah, honestly.
Yes, you can play your very own trolley game. There's also Pact of Negation, so this one is 0 mana to start with. It is a blue spell. It's an instant counter target spell. If only it stopped there, right?
Oh yeah.
At the beginning of your next upkeep, you have to pay 3 blue. If you don't, you lose the game. So this card, I'm surprised isn't on the Game Changers list because it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're casting it, you're probably winning that turn. Or you don't mind paying the 5 mana anyway.
It's the poster child for pushing a combo through.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
So if you really want those free spells, there you go. Those are the 2 best ones,
also have-
in my opinion.
Like Mind Break Trap is something
Yeah, you
that's
could run a
significantly more CEDH than what we play. It's a lot more common in higher powers where you are seeing a stack pretty regularly. It's 3 blue, and it's free after as long as 3 spells have already been cast. And it's counter target spell, but that's kind of a narrow window there of it sort of has to be like the 4th spell played that turn, which goes back to there are a lot of double spelling turns, but you also kind of need someone else to be participating in someone's turn, or someone has to really be popping off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that might be you. If you're playing a Spellslinger deck, like you could have cast
it's true.
3
Yeah.
spells
Yeah.
by then. However, if you just want to play a little bit more casually, which is probably why you're downgrading these Game Changers anyway, there's a lot of very cheap counter spells that I love to run, which one is an offer you can't refuse. I probably run this the most. It's 1 blue. It's an instant counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. So not too bad. If you're too afraid of treasure because it's a pervasive mechanic, you could go Swan Song, a 2/2 flyer. Doesn't matter too much, and it hits most spells, enchantments, instants, or sorceries specifically.
Yep.
So you could be running that. That's hyper efficient. Or if you just want to have some fun, then run Arcane Denial.
Yeah.
You'll never be sad
one.
running it because it's going to replace that card for your hand. You will be drawing your opponent 2 cards, but usually that you're pretty okay with doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're alive because of
And
it.
in some
Yeah.
decks, you kind of prefer it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I run it in Xeris because, like, if I've got Xeris, you're drawing 2 cards on the next upkeep. That's 2 snakes, baby.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. If you have those synergies with your opponent's drawing cards, it's a no-brainer.
For sure.
So you know your counter spells better than I do. Run your
Yeah.
favorite ones, but those are some very efficient ones if you want to.
Or just run Counterspell if you're
That one
bored.
too?
Yeah. It's strictly worse than most, but you can do it. Next up, we have Rhystic Study, 2 and a blue enchantment, and it says draw 1,000 cards.
Yeah.
It might as well.
Yeah, might as well. Yeah.
Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. So just like Smothering Tithe, you get to be Mr. Taxman and say, excuse me, would you like to pay the 1?
Sir, do you pay the 1?
And many people are very polarized on this card, whether they like to see it or not. And it's just insanely powerful, no matter which way you slice it. The right answer is to pay your taxes. However,
Agreed.
if they pay their taxes, it's still a cracked card.
Yeah.
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 Taxes are optional. Luigi
Responsible
doesn't pay 'em. Why should
people
you?
pay their taxes.
That's
That's why.
So if you just want some generic, easy blue card draw that's redundant, you could do Mystic Remora, which is 1 blue. It's an enchantment, has a cumulative upkeep, and whenever your opponents cast a non-creature spell, you can draw a card unless they pay 4, which they will never do. Those taxes are debilitating. But that's a good card. And then there's also the Bomb Consecrated Sphinx, which is 4 blue.
Oh, yeah.
No, never
Creature
heard of that
Sphinx,
card.
4/6.
Cool.
Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. You already know about this card, so I'm not going to belabor it too much.
paying twice a Rhystic Study to take away the option of them paying 1.
Well, no, but Rhystic says draw 1,000. Consecrated says draw 2,000.
Oh, you're right.
So
you're right.
At least double.
I think it evens out.
So
Yeah.
Rhystic goes in a normal commander deck, and Consecrated goes in your Yorian deck.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless, if your commander group has 2 brain cells, even if they're shared between the 3 blokes,
Yeah.
they are going to destroy Consecrated Sphinx, so run it with caution. Now, if you want to get a little bit more niche, a little bit more creative, there's Kumena's Awakening, 2 blue enchantment. Ascend at the beginning of your upkeep. Each player draws a card. Ooh. If you have the City's Blessing, instead only you draw a card. So City's Blessing is super easy to get off, and it's basically a Phyrexian Arena for you. It's in
the
blue.
life.
Yeah. Saves you the life. Is a little bit more costly. Not the most push card, but it is kind of good. Everwatching Threshold is another one. It's 2 and a blue enchantment. Whenever an opponent attacks you and or a planeswalker you control with a 1 or more creatures, you draw a card. So it's kind of like a propaganda-y type of fact. It dissuades opponents from swinging at you, and if they do, you get some fuel for your fire, which I kind of like a little bit, because if I can get you to swing your 6/6 somewhere else because you're afraid of what I might draw, like, that's also a benefit.
Yeah.
There's also Military Intelligence. This one's pretty efficient, so if you want to hit something down low, it's 1 and a blue, it's an enchantment. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. You have to be in blue, and you have to be a little bit aggro.
Yeah.
But usually you'll have some evasive creatures anyway. That can be a repeatable card draw. Now, for my soapbox.
Oh, boy.
If you want some spicy burst card draw, Recurring Insight is a banger. It's 4
boy.
blue.
this
Sorcery.
card.
Draw cards equal to the number of cards in target opponent's hand. Rebound. So since it has rebound, you not only get it now, but you also get it later. You guys know how many cards are in opponent's hands. You've cast Jeska's Will. We'll talk about that later. There's always at least like 5 cards between all of your opponents. You're going to be pay 6, draw 5. Sorry, pay 6, draw 10. Insane. This card's amazing. It's burst card draw. No one knows about it.
Well, and
I'm the only one.
the second half, the rebound half of it, getting that extra 5 on your upkeep is so beneficial, because then you have a full turn. Even if you don't have no maximum hand size, you get a full turn with those extra cards.
It's crazy. You running it, Alex?
No. There's a chance it's in Xeris,
It's so good.
but that would be the only...
If you haven't done it,
Okay.
try it. The only drawback is you are paying 6 mana to draw a billion cards, which does put a little tiny target on your back.
I am
little bit.
notoriously
A little
bad
one.
at drawing cards.
All right, what else do we got? We got Thoracle.
Yeah.
Ain't that right, Alex?
Thassa's Oracle.
Thassa's Oracle, great card. 2 mana for a 1/3 merfolk. Hear me out.
Already like it.
Great card, but it's too easy to replace. There are 13 2-mana 1/3 merfolk. Like that.
Do they also say win the game on them?
Oh, hang on. There's more text on this card. When Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. Now that changes it. There
little
are
bit.
not 12 other 2-mana 1/3 merfolk that say that. It is just this one. However, similar, it's generally used to win the game in blue decks by decking yourself.
Sure.
And so I found a couple other pieces that'll help you do this. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, the 4-mana Planeswalker, does the same thing.
Sure.
If you would draw a card and there's no cards in your library, you win the game. Laboratory Maniac, 3-mana Human Wizard, does the same thing. But that's really it as far as winning the game goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple other pieces that could help you kind of empty your library to get there, being like Paradigm Shift and Leveler, that are the 2 that come off Dome. Love them both. They're not necessarily good cards, though. But Thoracle is one of those things where, like, it has its own nickname because it's a very good card, and like you can see it a lot.
Yeah.
But Thoracle's also notably part of a couple 2-card combos with things like Demonic Consultation and
Tainted Pact.
Tainted Pact. I had the word tainted in my head, and I was like, it's not Tainted Strike. It's just not.
You're right, it's not.
Tainted Strike.
Different way to win the
Nope,
game.
definitely different.
But kind of Labman and Jace's would be the two that come to mind to replace it. They're a little bit more mana expensive and also not as kind of instant speed type of win the game. A lot of times you see Thoracle winning the game by Thoracle being on the stack and then the cast of Tainted Pact or Demonic Consultation. But those are, again, at more of a CDH level than what we generally play.
For sure.
Want to talk about good blue cards?
Not really. I'm kind of tired of them.
Well, I'm going to force feed you another one with Urza Lord High Artificer.
The worst one!
I love this one. Urza Lord High Artificer. 2 blue for a 1/4 legendary creature human artificer. When Urza enters the battlefield, create a construct, which is a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature, gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control.
That's where the card ends, right?
No, you wish, baby boy.
Oh, no.
Urza also has an ability of tap an untapped artifact you control to add blue. You ever just wanted all of your artifacts to be Mox Sapphire?
Can't say I have.
But it keeps going.
Oh my
There's
God.
more. For 5 mana, you can shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until the end of your turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. This card does everything an artifact deck wants.
Yeah, so let me get this straight, gives you a body.
Gives you a body.
That scales with your ever-increasing board
that
state.
scales with your tchotchkes, your Mishra's bubbles, your Urza's bubbles.
Gives you all the mana in the world.
Gives you can tap those for mana
And then gives you something to do with
and
it.
then gives you something to do with them.
Wow.
And then gives you you don't have to tap him for the last effect. It is just 5 mana to activate.
That's insane.
It is repeatable with infinite mana, so you can just say I flip over my deck. Stop me if you can.
Next time your hubby's slacking, remember Urza. If he wanted to, he would.
Exactly. He could do everything.
But, I mean, if you're looking to replace Urza in the 99, that's kind of hard. But if he's your commander, I would suggest looking for a different artifact commander. Like, I personally don't run Urza, even though I know if I ran Urza as my commander, it would be significantly better. But I run Emery Lurker of the Lock. She is a 2 and a blue for a 1/3 Merfolk. And when she enters the battlefield, you mill 4 cards, and she costs 1 less for each artifact you control. And then you can tap her to cast target artifact spell from your graveyard. So, again, it's like a combo enabler. They both do sort of the same thing, except Urza has a lot more utility, making a body, tapping. But Emery also can do, like, degenerate combo things as well. And then the other one is Psy Master Thopterist, which is 2 and a blue for a 1/4 human artificer.
I think you're right, yeah.
And then whenever you cast an artifact, make a Thopter?
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely both can do disgusting things in artifact decks. Both can be very powerful because you're in blue. So yeah, if you're looking to like replace Urza in your 99, maybe include Psy for the bodies or Emery for the combo potential.
Yeah. But he's kind of irreplaceable.
Yeah, Urza definitely is a cut above your every other mono blue artifact commander.
I'd say he's probably above every other blue commander. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why he's a game changer.
nuts.
That's why
For
he's
sure.
a game changer, you know?
For sure.
So
Yeah, you
I
can't
think-
really cut him. Like
No.
that's like a, you know, if
Right.
you're running
You
him
can-
as
you
your
can
commander,
try.
if you want to go to a bracket 2 deck, you gotta.
Yeah, you gotta maybe play your Emerys, maybe play your Thighs, maybe play your Size, maybe play your Leonardo da Vinci's.
Hey.
Your Leonardo da Vinci's. That card has a lot of
Vinci?
things. But yeah, that's kind of the replacements for Urza.
Maybe play
Urza.
Digimon.
Yeah,
No, don't do that. Still play Magic.
Yeah.
We like Magic here.
Hell yeah.
It's true.
What do you got for us, Alex?
I have Mystical Tutor for
Oh.
1 blue, just single blue pip. I held that up like it was a 0. It's supposed to be a pip. You get an instant. Search your library for an instant or a sorcery. Shuffle your library, put that card on top. Mystical Tutor is a very good card. There is a lot of tutors in blue, not necessarily the same kind of price. A lot of them a little bit more restrictive. The ones that came to my mind pretty immediately were Personal Tutor and Solve the Equation. But there's also like Spellseeker and Merchant Scroll. And then relatively recent printing of Waterlogged Teachings, which does almost the same thing. You do have to have at least a Dimir color identity, but it's also an MDFC, which means Jake can play it as a land.
And I will, and probably have, honestly.
But just the ability to tutor for an instant or a sorcery at instant speed is very strong. The fact that it then goes on top of your library can be seen as a downside in a lot of colors, but this is blue we're talking about. You're telling me that's going to stay on top of your library? Probably not.
With Urza, you can play it for free.
Yeah. And
No, he shuffles.
Oh, true.
the longest it might stay on top of your library is if you do it on somebody else's end step and have to wait for your own draw phase.
God forbid.
Yeah, cool. Terrible. But you're playing blue, so you're probably going to draw at that turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said earlier about like you kind of know what you're going for applies here because you could play personal tutor if you know you want a sorcery, or you know.
Yeah.
What was the other one? The merchant scroll if you know you want an instant. So just swap it out for that because you know what you want.
Waterlog teachings being instant or flash also fits into the I know I want an instant, or some decks just don't run that many sorceries. I have a Talran deck that runs very, very little sorceries because the goal is to play a lot of things at instant speed. And if you know that's going to be the case, or my Calamax deck runs almost no sorceries, if you know that's going to be the case, then you can quite simply just swap it out for something that just finds you an instant instead.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
Easy peasy.
Man, I'm getting all the donkey blue cards today. We're talking
sure
about
are.
Jin-Gitaxias, Core Augur.
Lord.
One of my pet blue cards. I love this card because it was one of the first like big mythic rares that I like bought with my own money.
Boy, is
The
he
lore.
big.
So Jin-Gitaxias Core Augur is 8 blue for a 5/4 Praetor with flash. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. You just
Mana jump.
my man just says that. And each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. Now that text at the end, no other card in the game has
Wait a
that
second.
except for 2 rats that respectively reduce hand size by 1 and reduce hand size by 2. Locust
Wait.
Miser and Gnat Miser.
But my regular hand size is only 7.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
If you run completely different colors, you can run winter.
Yeah. Yeah. If you run completely different colors, you can play the 2 rats that at maximum cost 5 mana and only reduce maximum hand size by 3. So
Yeah, that's tough.
You're like almost halfway there.
Yeah, so
of.
I'm completely disregarding the last line of
Kinda
Jin-Gitaxias
necessary.
Core Augur's text because he's the only. It's the reason why he's a game changer. He's the only one that does that. So we're talking about draw 7s. So like Windfalls is mainly the thing.
Recurring insight.
Yeah, Echo. So you get commission.
I'm speculating on recurring insight.
Yeah, I was
Buy
just,
'em up.
you speculating. Things
We're bad
like,
with money. Don't believe our investments.
like
true.
Echo of Eons, like Time Twister, Escafex, like Midnight Clock. Those things
Based.
like, yeah,
What's the-
I know I'd get you on that one.
What's the other MDFC, the blue one?
Seagate Restoration.
Seagate Restoration.
Seagate Restoration. Just burst a blue card draw so you can draw those 7 cards. It is repeatable on Jin-Gitaxias, but you can live with only doing it once or twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately, if you want it to be repeatable, your best option is what? Arcanus? Tap, draw 3?
Yeah, Arcanus, yeah.
That's kind
Yeah,
of
so
it.
so just like your
End
normal
step draw 7, kind of unbeatable.
Yeah. So your normal like blue burst card draw, Seagate Restoration, your Windfalls, your Wheel Effects, your Echo of Eons, your Time Twisters.
Yeah.
Like refilling your hand.
Ancient Silver Dragon is, I guess, sort of repeatable.
Sort
I
of.
think that's a good, a good swap.
Creature replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of reason people run Praetors is to reanimate. Big reanimate targets that
Yeah.
are just splashy.
Do that.
The ancient dragons are pretty good ones.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, granted, the deck I have that runs Jin-Gitaxias cheats them out for free.
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly. You're cheating them.
Yeah. It's just like cheaty effects, draw 7s. That's kind of what you're looking for with Jin-Gitaxias. If you're a sicko that runs this as your commander, God help you.
God help your pod.
Go to church.
Yeah. Don't subscribe. Don't
But
like.
if you have him in your 99, I feel like he's one of the easier cards to
For sure.
swap out and just get something a little bit lesser on the power level and more on the flavor level.
Noreen, you want to talk about donkey cards?
Oh, I love donkey cards.
One of my favorite donkey cards is up next, and that is Bolas' Citadel. Oh boy.
Boy.
Citadel is one of my favorite cards in all of Magic. It is 3 black, black, black for an artifact that is legendary. Says you can look at the top of your library at any time. Some of Ryan's favorite text in Magic. But it also says that you may play cards from the top of your library by paying life.
The other half of Ryan's favorite text in Magic.
Pretty good. And then, to put a bow on all of it, you can sacrifice 10 non-land permanents to have your opponents lose some life.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
First two go together. Where'd that last line come from?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the 3 black pips is where it came from.
Yeah.
But this is another card that is just like so hard to replace, especially in colors. So if you want to lose a bunch of life and get some extra cards, you can run Dark Confidant, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Bob effects.
Bad Bobby.
But for casting off the top of your library, I don't think I have any that do that. Hold
Not
on.
in
Yep.
black.
Yeah, in color's tough.
In color, insanely difficult. But if you're out of color, play Omniscience.
You throw blue in there. Maybe you get like a Future Sight.
Yeah, you can play not
on
Omniscience.
PGI.
One with the multiverse. is the one that
Counterbalance?
lets
Oh, yeah.
you look at the top. You can also run the Reality Chip, which, as long as it's equipped, lets you play off the top of your library as well. And then I think the other thing I had was Augur of Autumn, which, as long as you have Coven, lets you do most green things from the top of your library. Yeah. But as far as killing your opponents and losing you a bunch of life, kind of difficult to get that all in one package. Citadel is something special.
Yeah. So forget about looking at the top of your library. What about searching your library?
So I have the task of talking about mono black tutors today, and we're gonna be lumping them all together. We're talking about Demonic Tutor, Imperial Seal, and Vampiric Tutor. Now these are all tutors. Demonic Tutor is 1 and a black. Search library for a card, put it in your hand. It's a sorcery. Vampiric Tutor is 1 black, search your library for a card, put it on top. It's an instant, and then you lose 2. Imperial Seal is the exact same text, but a sorcery. Now, there are a lot of tutors in mono black. A lot of them are a lot more mana than these tutors.
Yeah.
The baseline is usually, you're looking around 4 to 5 mana for a Demonic Tutor with 0 downside. You're looking at about 2 mana for a Demonic Tutor with serious downside.
Yep.
So, but I think one of them is very flavorful, and that one is Wishclaw Talisman. Wishclaw Talisman is 1 and a black for an artifact. This artifact enters with 3 wish counters on it. You can pay one generic, tap, remove a wish counter from this artifact, search a library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. An opponent gains control of this artifact, activate only during your turn. And I feel like that's flavorful. I like that. I like it's a politics enabler. It can enable you to talk to the table.
Yep.
And it's just fun to have in your deck. It's the same rate as a Demonic Tutor and does the same thing. It's an artifact, so it's a little bit more fragile.
But I will say, because it's an artifact, you can also do some degenerate things
You
with
can
it.
do degenerate things with
Please
artifacts.
don't play it with Ashiok.
No. I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about like straight up Demonic Tutors that just cost more mana, Mastermind's Acquisition, 2 black for a sorcery. Choose one. Demonic Tutor, search a library for a card, put it in your hand, shuffle, or choose a card from you own from outside the game and put it in your hand. Now you might have to rule 0 a wish board in your game, but
they won't give it to you.
They will not give it to you. So you're essentially doing a 4 mana Demonic Tutor, which is honestly a pretty good rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Diabolic Tutor.
Yeah,
Basically.
Yeah. Diabolic Tutor, and another one that I can talk about is Final Parting. I know Jake's gonna like Final Parting.
I like Final Parting.
Final Parting is 3 black for a sorcery. Search a library for 2 cards. Count them, 2 cards. Put one of them into your hand, the other into your bin.
Pretty good.
So you can get a Gravecrawler in there.
Now, why would you
And
put
then
something in your bin in black?
No, why would you?
Can't imagine.
No, why would you? Can put a Praetor in there and get the Reanimate into your
Yeah,
hand.
it's pretty sad.
That's pretty cool
Yeah.
that you could get the thing to get it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get Reanimate and put a big donkey in your bin. Yeah, so I think Final Parting I found researching for this, so I think I might just pick up a couple copies for some decks.
Yeah, me too, honestly.
Yeah, Final Parting, very cool card. And the last card I want to talk about, because I know I had to shoe in a Planeswalker in here somewhere, is Liliana Vess. Liliana Vess is 3 black for Planeswalker Liliana. She has 5 starting loyalty, +1, target player discards a card. -2. Search your library for a card.
There it is.
Then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. Vampiric Tutor, except you don't lose life. And then -8. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Rise of the Dark Realms.
Just a solid card.
Rise of the Dark Realms. So if you just want, solid Planeswalker in your deck that can -2 still stick around and maybe accrue you value, 5 mana, get a card on top of your library, draw it with your Sign in Blood effect. So
Pretty good.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the sacrifice-oriented ones,
Yeah,
right?
Diabolic Intent,
That one's
which
very
is
competitive.
1 and a black, sacrifice a creature, as an additional cost to this spell, sacrifice a creature, and then you Demonic Tutor.
Yeah.
Search for a card, put it in your hand.
I think of all the game changers, like these effects are probably some of the easiest to replace.
Yeah.
Because there's also Entomb. There's,
Yeah.
Well,
If
a
you don't
Mark's
care about
Grave.
it to hand, if you need it in a different zone, black has probably got you there too.
and the fact
Yeah.
that like 3 of them make the list just goes to show like how many of them there are.
There are a lot.
That they can afford to put 3 of them on the list.
Yeah, but these are the most lethally efficient versions of these
Oh,
effects.
absolutely.
And that's hence why they're on the game changer list. But I like having a more chunky mana cost to my tutor, as well as including a little bit more flavor, especially with Final Parting. I like that card a
Yeah.
lot.
yeah, very cool.
It is. But with all of this tutoring, Wizards just had to print a way to stop it. So the next card we're going to talk about is Opposition Agent, which I believe is 2 and a black for a flash human rogue. That when it enters the battlefield, you gain control of an opponent who's searching a library, basically, and you search libraries until it's gone. A very polarizing effect, I think. I don't think it's that bad. I think you can get some people that crack their Terramorphic Expanses on turn 3, whatever. But
Yeah, you can definitely pub stomp some people.
yeah,
with this
Oppo
card.
I think Oppo is one of those cards that if you're a bad actor, card's way better.
Yeah.
If you're putting it places it doesn't belong, it's way better.
Which is weird because some people see this as sort of like a policeman of the format,
Yeah.
like punishing the plethora of land ramp type cards in green that are all absent from this list.
Yeah, the Escape Ship not on the list.
Escape
Crazy.
not on this list. Open the Way not on this list. But that's a different conversation. But yeah, I think Oppo Agent, it kind of has a place in the overall ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it has a place. I think its effect is very niche, and I think if you need this effect because your pod has a lot of tutors in it, then it's probably worth the game changer slot. If you're looking to cut that corner though, just get rid of your friends. Play Praetor's Grasp. Play Bribery. Play Stolen Goods. Take the decision out of it. Just go get the best thing.
I will say it will feel bad if you Oppo Agent my 5 mana Final Parting. I will be upset.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I will be upset.
For me, I don't think I would ever play this card. I think I'd rather play Praetor's Grasp. Just because Praetor's Grasp is 3 mana, search your opponent's library for a card, exile it, you may play it for as long as it remains exiled. So you can go get the best thing, or their combo piece, or whatever they were going to tutor for anyways.
Gonti enjoyers know.
Yeah, Gonti Enjoyer is well aware. I've got this in a Zevlor deck, Praetor's Grasp, not Oppo
Along with
Agent.
Bribery.
Yeah, along with Bribery, and pretty good effects. So, if you're running Oppo and you're making your opponents mad, just make them mad in a different way. Play Praetor's Grasp.
Yeah.
It's a good card.
Yeah.
So we're making our opponents mad.
Yeah.
So I have a deck that you may never see of mine because I very rarely play it because it doesn't allow me to keep friends. And that is Tergric, God of Fright.
Sure.
For 3 black, you get a legendary creature god. It's a 4/5 with menace. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It has a backside. It's barely relevant. It's Tergric's Lantern for 3 and a black. Legendary artifact. Tap. Target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card.
Yeah, that doesn't
And
seem
for
so
4
bad.
mana, you can untap Tergric's Lantern.
In draft, you always play the backside.
Yeah, that card.
Well, and there are ways to go infinite with it, provided you have infinite mana. You can just make them sacrifice everything and then continue to retap and just drain them of their life.
Aristocrats players hate her.
But
No, very true.
this is here for the front side of Tergrid. Tergric is not a fun card to play against. Granted, I wouldn't know, but so I've been told.
We've talked about Siphon Mind enough on this,
So
on this
true.
podcast.
But that's part of the reason why she's not as fun to play. But there are a couple replacements for her, which surprisingly easier to find than I thought it would be, because she does feel like a very unique effect, just the ability to get things. So I went ahead, I found Grave Betrayal, It That Betrays, and Liliana Heretical Healer, which are all focused around pretty much just sacrificing creatures
Another Planeswalker.
and getting them back. When other people sacrifice creatures, you get them back. One of the fancier parts about Tergric being when they also discard cards, you do get those permanents, as well as like if they sacrifice lands, if they sacrifice artifacts, like if for some reason they have a saga that then ends and has to be sacrificed.
You get that?
You get the saga. It is a
Secret tech.
yeah.
Summons?
So, Tergric herself is a very kind of unfun card to play against. There are a lot of ways to do similar to just kind of boning the Aristocrats player.
Or the discard player.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
there are other ways to do that with stuff like Gisa or Rest in Peace, just to make sure that stuff doesn't go into the bin in general. But Tergric being able to just be like, hey, that's mine now, is a little bit more on the unique side, especially for the lower mana cost, and being able to have it in the command zone. I personally think part of what makes Tergric such a high level of salt and puts her on this list is the fact that it's very easy to build an entire deck around Tergric.
Yeah.
I think I've made next to no changes to my Tergric deck since Kaldheim came out. There's maybe been 1 or 2 card swaps, and that's really it. And that's because you play kind of all of your sack creatures and then just profit.
Yeah.
And you play your Herald of Leshrac and take their lands too and just profit.
Yeah.
I mean, it says
Do
something.
crime.
It says something when I'd rather play against the Braids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest about it. Like, if we're heavy in the territory of, like, if you want to be doing Tergric things, you should be running a bracket 3 or 4 deck.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So,
Same
like,
thing with Urza. And
if
She
you're
very
trying to
much
game
fits
that
that
system,
same
like,
thing.
don't.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
You're not going to play Tergric and then just run zombies. Like,
this is my Tergric exhibition deck.
yeah.
It's a theme deck. I play it for the lantern side.
Oh.
Could happen. Could happen.
Could happen.
This is my Tergric deck. Every
Send me
card
that
has,
list.
has a lantern in the art.
Oh, God.
All right, what about another pretty spicy card, Jake?
Oh, this is another one of my favorite cards. Again, it sees a lot more play in CDH, so we don't see a ton of it, but I have cast an Ad Nauseam before. Ad Nauseam, 3 black. It's a pretty unique effect, but it basically says, look at the top card of your library, you lose life equal to its mana value, you can choose to do this any number of times.
Super bad.
So it's, black mass card draw. It's a pretty unique effect. The fact that it is also an instant and you can do this on somebody's end step is,
Gross.
very, very gross.
Disgusting.
Ad Naus is great. It, introduces a little bit of a deck building restriction in that you don't want to be playing a ton of 7 drops because you don't want to be taking 7 off the top.
No.
It's kind of the opposite of Citadel, where you want everything to be towards the lower end.
Yeah.
Replacements for this are actually pretty easy, though, because black has a lot of mass card draw if you're willing to pay for it. Notably, Peer into the Abyss, which is similar, but 7 mana instead for draw half of your library and lose half of your life. I don't know.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
Pretty good.
That's pretty cool.
50 cards for 20 life is a pretty solid deal.
This is pretty good, and you know what? You're gonna lose it anyways with the Ad Naus, so
Most importantly, saves everybody time.
sure does. You don't have to flip every card over. Oh, I take 0 from this swamp. It's yep. You just all right. This is my hand now. It's great.
How big's your deck? Okay, what's that divided by 2? Sick. Draw that many.
Yep, exactly. Ad Naus got a ton of replacements. Damnable Pact. You could replace it with a Sign in Blood if you really wanted to. For mass card draw, this is kind of it. The only other notable replacement, I think, is the red card, Dance with Calamity, which is super interesting. I think it's like...
Hound loves that card.
Yeah, it's 8 mana for a sorcery. where you basically play blackjack with the top of your deck, so you declare whether you're going to go before you know what the card is, and then you lose life equal to its mana value. And as long as everything is under, 13?
13,
Yeah.
You get to play those cards, which is crazy. It's a different kind of game, and it's not quite the same mass card draw, but if you're into ad nause for the weird, like, lose life thing, Dance with Calamity might be where you're at.
You like the little mini games, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually been thinking about adding Dance with Calamity to decks just because it sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a
just
very
like,
neat
How
card.
close am I going to get? And
For
I
sure.
feel like you probably have to know your deck pretty well, too, to think, okay, like, what are the odds I'm going to bust, you know?
Oh my god.
Except in a bad way.
For sure.
You talk about Limb Duel?
Oh, no. The other one is Limduel's Vault, which is very similar.
And Dimir.
Yeah, it's in Dimir, and you only get 5 cards with this one, so you look at sets of 5 off the top of your library, and you pay a life each time. If you like it, you keep it. If you don't, you put it on the bottom and keep going. It's closer to Doomsday, I think, than it is to Ad Nause. But, if you're in Dimir and you want to take up all of your friends' time in the same way that Ad Nause does, play Limduel's Vault, because it'll do that.
All right, that is our wrap up on black. Now we got red cards, and lucky for you guys, there's only 2 of them. So we don't
Get
have
through this one a little bit quicker.
Switch to how many of your red cards out. So Jeska's Will, 2 in a red, sorcery, choose 1. If you control a commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both. Add a red for each card in target opponent's hand. I told you we'd talk about this again. And the other option is exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to be honest. You can't replace this card.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's stupid good.
If you really need to knock this card down, then you're going to have to take this Neapolitan ice cream and break it in half. You're going to have to get your vanilla, you're going to have to get your chocolate. So let's talk
Get your
a little bit
strawberries somewhere else.
about the first side, which is the big mana side. So unbeatable is the Mana Geyser. So 3 red, sorcery, add a red for each tap land your opponents control. That's insane.
They just don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah, they do not. It's 2 lines of text, and it's incredibly impactful, especially in Commander. If you need big mana, this is going to do it better than Jeska's Will.
100%.
You just need your card advantage along with it. Now, there's Rousing Refrain. It's 3 red, sorcery. Or you could suspend it, put 3 time counters on it for 1 in a red. Either way, when it resolves, add red for each card in target opponent's hand. That sounds familiar.
Wait a minute.
I'm a big
I've
fan
heard that
of
text before.
Especially because it comes back.
Yes, until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end, so that's pretty cool. And then it also exiles itself with 3 times counters on it. So whether you cast it hard cast or if you suspended it early in the game, it's going to keep coming back every couple
Every
turns.
3 turns.
You just need to be in a pod that, is around a little bit longer than like 5 turns for it to really make sense.
Get cooking.
Yeah.
If you just need a quick burst of impulse draw, then Ren's Resolve is pretty good at it. It's 1 in red, sorcery, impulse draw the top 2 cards, and you have until your next turn. I always like to look for that for impulse because then you get a fresh turn.
Yeah.
Ren's Resolve is pretty unparalleled.
I've made that mistake more than a couple times.
Yeah.
It's just like, sick, I'm going to get these 2 cards. I'm already in main phase 2. I also have no mana left.
Yeah.
Well, that was a waste of essentially 3 cards.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. So we also have Glimpse the Impossible with 2 in a red, sorcery, exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. So it is a this turn effect, but you do get a rebate if you don't use them. So at the beginning of the next end step, if any of those cards remain exile, put them into your graveyard and you create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token for each card put into the graveyard this way, and you can sack them for a colorless.
That's crazy.
So not only do you get the cards in your graveyard, but you also get a rebate on the mana.
Yeah.
So I think that card is actually kind of underplayed. I don't see it too much.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
There's also at Sushi, the Blazing Sky, legendary creature, dragon spirit, 4/4, flying trample. When it dies, you choose 1, you exile the top, you impulse the top 2, or you create 3 treasure tokens. So this gives you a little bit of that modularity, especially if you're reanimating, bringing stuff back, or you care about dice triggers. This gives you both sides of Jeska's Will, just a little bit less.
Yeah.
You probably need some strong synergies there. Now, Another card that has both sides is Inspired Tinkering. Inspired Tinkering, 4 and a red, sorcery, exile the top. Sorry, impulse the top 3 cards. You can play them until the end of your next turn, and you get 3 treasure tokens, so you get a little rebate. Which means this is translation for let's set up our next turn. It's going to be explosive.
Yeah.
Because you can cast those exiled cards, you can use your treasure tokens. It kind of pays off. It's not as impactful. Like I said, you need your Jeska's Will, but these are some pretty good backups.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of cards that are irreplaceable in red, the other one is no better. We've got Underworld Breach, which is 1 and a red for an enchantment that says cards in your graveyard have, I think it says non-land cards in your graveyard have escape. Sacrifice Underworld Breach at the beginning of the next end step. Oh boy. Breach is the only way to get back any card you want from your yard in red. Literally the only way that you can do whatever you want. As long as you have 4 cards in there, you can get one of them back, I promise you. That is just unbeatable. Like if you're looking to get things back in red, you need to know what you're looking for because your replacement is Past in Flames or Mizzix Mastery, which target instants and sorceries in your bin and can't get you back a creature, right? Creature recursion in red, you're kind of shit out of luck, to be honest.
Mono red, you're cooked.
So if you're looking to replace things, or if you're looking to replace Underworld Breach with similar effects, if you're looking for permanents, you probably have to go to other colors. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
If you're only looking for instants and sorceries, Mizzix Mastery has it for you. You can overload it to get everything, and it'll clear your yard the same way. And Past in Flames gives everything in your bin flashback. So if you've got a ton of mana, or flashback synergies, because it also has flashback, play that one. The other type of effect is Recoup. I like that one. It only gets back sorceries, though, and it also has flashback. So I like this card. I don't expect you to run it, though, but I think it's pretty cool. A card you might actually run, though, is Pinnacle Monk. They just printed this in Modern Horizons 3, and it is, 4 mana, 5 mana? 5?
3 red.
Yeah, 3 red for a monk with prowess, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to Archaeomance or something. So bring an instant or sorcery from your graveyard back to your hand. It is also a bolt land on the back, which means that the utility is kind of unparalleled. Underworld Breach can't be a land.
It's peak.
Mystic
Peak.
But again, this is another effect that can only get back instants and sorceries. So it's a little bit more limited in that. Breach, just kind of unbeatable, and if you're storming off with Breach, you deserve to be in a power 3 or 4 pod, to be honest.
Yeah. That's red.
That's red. That's all of it.
We're not going to talk about Ruination.
No, instead we're going to talk about some green cards.
Yeah, green cards.
And we're actually going to lead off with a card that I have never seen played. I've never seen it in content. I've never seen it at our table, and it is Survival of the Fittest. I think it's 3 or 4 mana for an enchantment that has 1 green, discard a creature card. Tutor a creature card from your library to your hand. That's crazy.
That's
insane.
It's insane.
This card's super expensive, or at least it used to be. And if you're looking for creature tutors, like repeatable creature tutors, specifically in like a sneak attack deck, Survival of the Fittest is like cream of the crop. It just doesn't get better.
You can get it for a one-time effect with Natural Order, but both of those things got to be in play.
If
Fauna
you're
Shaman's close.
replacing this, Fauna Shaman is my go-to. So Fauna Shaman is the same effect, but it is a green and tap to do Survival of the Fittest. So you can only do it once a turn. But the other replacement effects are also one-off. So you've got Natural Order, which is 2 green for a sorcery that you sacrifice a creature, tutor a green creature straight to the battlefield, so you don't have to cast it. That one's great. Or Eldritch Evolution, which you sacrifice something on board and then tutor another thing straight to the board.
With increased mana value.
Yeah, with 2 mana value more. And these are cheaper effects, but they're not repeatable. That's really the sticking point with Survival of the Fittest.
Yeah, Fittest is gross.
That's a good trade-off. I think that fits for like a lower bracket pod.
Yeah.
100%
your birthing pod-esque effects.
Yeah. Now, Natural Order might scare some people, because usually that finds Craterhoof Behemoth. So maybe don't run that. But Fauna Shaman...
Protein Hulk.
Yeah, Fauna Shaman's gotten pretty cheap lately. I'd highly recommend that as a replacement for Survival.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's the same mana cost. Fauna Shaman's just 1 and a green.
It's just a little bit more vulnerable as a creature.
And fits elf synergies.
Speaking of vulnerable creatures, though.
Hey, it's me, the Praetor guy. We're talking about Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger. You know, the 2 Praetors I've talked about are 2 of the Praetors I've played the most.
That's crazy.
All we need is a Sheoldred, but she's not a game
It's almost like we
changer.
selected cards ahead of time.
So, Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, is 6 green for a 7/6 legendary creature Praetor with Trample. Whenever you tap a land for mana, you add an additional mana of whatever color that land could produce, and whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Again, like Jin-Gitaxias, that last line of text on Vorinclex, no other card does that. No other card does that. However, the other line of text, a lot of cards do. Some cards do it better than Vorinclex. So, Vorinclex is a donkey mana doubler, but it also stun counters your opponent's lands. Stun countering your opponent's lands in a color that, like green, is unheard of and probably won't see the light of day again.
Yeah. Maybe in Simic, which would be gross.
Maybe in Simic, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
But, however, that doubling your mana shows up on a lot of green cards. Like Mana Reflection is one, which is just, I believe, 3 green that just doubles your mana. Zendikar Resurgent, which, again, does that, but you get to draw a card whenever
draws
you
cards, doesn't
cast a creature spell. My 2 favorite that I'm going to be talking about is another Planeswalker, Nissa Who Shakes the World.
That's a good one.
So Nissa Who Shakes the World is 3 green for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker Nissa. Whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an additional green. She has a lot of other text, but you're usually playing her just for the passive.
Yeah.
So again, it's a Planeswalker like Liliana that gets you an effect immediately when she drops down, and she can just one of her loyalty abilities untaps a forest, so it
Pretty
gives
good.
you extra mana.
Yep. 2 mana.
And then an extra 2 mana. And the other effect that I wanted to talk about, like a creature that doubles your mana, is Nyxbloom Ancient.
Let's go. I was hoping you were going to talk about this one.
Nyxbloom Ancient is 4 green for a 5/5 enchantment creature, elemental, with trample, like Vorinclex. If you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much mana instead.
The important part there was the trample, because we all play Vorinclex for trample.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the sickos out there with their trample decks. But yeah, Nyxbloom Ancient is disgusting on its own, unanswered. So again, like Vorinclex, but Vorinclex has that last line of text that no other green card has. But if you're looking to replace it, I think Nyxbloom Ancient is the best.
For sure.
That you're looking for. It's a big donkey creature with trample, adds more mana than Vorinclex on your lands. So yeah. So I believe it's legitimately a 1-for-1.
Yeah.
sub.
And it's
Sub out.
significantly less salty.
Yeah. You don't get a dirty eye. You don't the powers that be at the table don't
Yeah.
have to create the Justice League to kill the Vorinclex. Someone doesn't have to feel bad of like, oh, I guess I'm killing the Vorinclex. So these lands won't untap. Yeah, so I think it just, like you said, it gets rid of the salt at the table.
50% more mana, 95% less salt.
True.
The healthy alternative.
Speaking of lots of mana, though.
Yeah, so hi, it's me, the land guy, apparently.
Oh my god. True, though.
I'm going to be talking about Gaea's Cradle. It's a legendary land. Tap, add green to your mana pool for each creature you control. It's relatively a one-off. We're seeing it a little bit more often in different ways. The card that immediately comes to mind has been around for a little bit. Growing Rites of Itlimoc, which is for 2 and a green. You get a legendary enchantment. On ETB, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest to the bottom of your library in any order. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform Growing Rites of Itlimoc. It becomes Itlimoc, Cradle of the Sun. Hey, another Cradle. Would you look at that? Taps for green, or you can tap to add green for each creature you control. That is going to be the most 1-for-1 as far as Gaea's Cradle goes.
Yeah.
It's a little bit bigger hoops to get through to get there.
Because Growing Rites is a end step trigger, right?
Correct.
So you could have that same turn.
Yeah, you absolutely could. Especially, there's a lot of cheap green creatures that kind of get you there and get you going. Especially in the decks that you're going to want something like that effect in.
For sure.
I opened that card in my XLM pre-release and thought it was bad.
Oh, no. So, the other ones that immediately come to mind for me are going to be 3 Tree City, which is a relatively recent printing.
Yeah.
I run a lot of typal decks, and so this kind of fills that niche just as well. As it enters, choose a creature type, tap to add a colorless, or pay 2 and tap to add an amount of mana of that color. Choose a color, add an amount of mana of that color equal to the number of creatures you control of the chosen type. Yeah. So upside, it can do more than just green, so it can go in a few more decks. Downside, you have to pay 2 for it, and it cares about a specific creature type that you do have to choose when it enters the battlefield.
Yeah.
A deck building restriction.
And paired with it, I also thought of Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. While we're on the topic of Nyx, Nykthos taps to add color in your amount of devotion to that color. Another very good, just kind of give me a whole bunch of mana all at one time in one specific color type of deal. But Gaea's Cradle is a gajillion dollars, maybe like 5 less than a gajillion dollars, but still a gajillion dollars. We round up here. Growing Rights significantly less. 3 Tree City and Nykthos more than Growing Rights, but still significantly less than a Gaea's Cradle would be, and all far more available than a Gaea's Cradle is at this point.
There's also that Cradle on a Body, right? What's his name?
Circle of Dreams.
Oh, Circle of
yeah,
Dreams.
Circle of Dreams Druid,
Yeah.
Is just Cradle on a Body.
3 green, 3 green for a 3/3 Gaea's Cradle.
Yeah. So it's an effect they're bringing back.
Yeah,
for some reason.
Temperamentally.
It kind of appears here and there. It's not super common, but it is more common than most of the other lands that made it onto the Game Changers list, which is weird to think about when you think about the price of a Gaea's Cradle.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
Well, I think that does it for all of our
Green.
monocolored cards, actually. That's all of them.
Yeah, that's all of them.
So moving right along, we will be talking about multicolored cards or gold cards.
Gold cards.
I have 3 of them.
You
do. First one I would like to talk about is Yuriko. Get her out of the way first and foremost. All right, Commander Ninjutsu was a mistake. We all know that. We've been new. In case you don't know what Yuriko does, 1 blue-black for a 1/4 ninja with Commander Ninjutsu for Dimir. She loses your opponent's life when ninjas connect. The important part is that she's always on board because of Commander Ninjutsu. Not Kinnan. Yuriko is, or has been, the ninja commander.
Yeah.
The one and only ninja commander. So if you have a Yuriko deck, and you weren't aware, there is a replacement that they just printed called Tycho, the Patient Avalanche. He is a 5-mana turtle ninja. He does some other top deck stuff, doesn't lose life. He's a little bit slower, but he's not salty. And he's also not a game changer. So if you want to have a ninja deck in bracket 1 or 2, and you don't want to include Yuriko, he's probably the easiest swap.
Oh yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah.
But for just that kind of like aggro playstyle, it's kind of hard to beat.
Fun fact about Taiko, you can actually watch Jake play his Taiko deck on our channel.
Right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Over there.
Up there.
Yeah.
Exactly where
Somewhere
Al
there.
pointed.
Yep.
He's the one editing, so.
So Tycho and
we love him for it.
ninjas are kind of like where I'm headed. Like that's where I think it's good. They also printed the new Satoru.
Yeah,
Umezawa.
there's a couple Satoros.
Yeah, I think the original Satoru doesn't really care about ninjas that much.
The one from OTJ.
The one from OTJ works with ninjas, but doesn't specifically care about ninjas.
Yeah.
I did try him out. He wasn't for me. And then if you're looking out of color, Grixis has Gorogoro and Satoru, which is very good.
They make dragons, no?
Yeah, it makes dragons, but works very synergistically with the ninja play pattern. And then there's also Hidetsugu and Kairi, which is not ninja focused, but what it does is it keeps you in Dimir colors and it loses your opponent's life for your top deck. So I think what it does is ETB, you brainstorm or ponder the top of your library, and then when you connect, you reveal the top and they lose life equal to its mana value.
It does.
It's very similar to Yuriko.
Yeah, it does the Yuriko thing just without ninjas.
Yeah, it doesn't have the ninja coat of paint on it. So, I looked at them, but they weren't for me. The next card we're going to talk about is also a mistake, in my opinion, and that's Kinnan Bonder Prodigy.
You like Simic big mana?
Yeah. This is another one that doesn't really have a replacement. Surprisingly, Kinnan is blue-green, so only 2 mana, for... Is he a 1/2?
1/2, 1/3.
He's
1/4?
little.
Yeah.
Whenever you tap a non-land
little.
permanent for mana, add an additional mana that it could produce.
Insane.
And then he's
Crazy.
got 5 to spin the top, or reveal the top 5 of your
7.
library. 7?
A 5 and Simic.
Oh, 7 mana. Got
Yeah.
it. Look at the top 5, reveal a creature card, put it onto the battlefield. So, a little bit like Urza. Surprisingly like Urza.
Yeah, now that you say it out loud,
actually.
surprisingly, that's like a Simic Urza.
This is
Yeah.
just non-humans.
Yeah, because...
It's so
Ikoria.
difficult to build a Simic deck without human cards in it.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Kinnan has, you know, a lot of things going for him. He combos with Basalt Monolith. He gives you an outlet for your infinite mana combos. If you have Kinnan as your commander,
Seek help.
yeah, seek help. Do something else.
Or
Honestly,
play CDH. You don't
Yeah,
belong in looking to remove game changers.
There are
You're
mana
trying to win as
dorks.
soon
There
as
are mana
possible.
dork commanders in Simic.
Yeah, there are
Jessica and Inga or whoever.
there are other things that you could do that manipulate mana in Simic. I think the thing that a lot of people like about him is the outlet in the
True.
zone.
Yeah.
And for
case-
that,
Thrasios.
yeah,
Another
there's
CDH All-Star.
yeah, there's not a ton for that either, because the only one I could find is like Turn Timber Symbiosis, which is look at the top 7 and pluck a creature. It's like it's almost
Ooh.
literally as text, but it's 7 mana and a sorcery, so not super
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Kinnan's bottom or activated ability is intense. If you have him in the 99, maybe just swap him for something else. A Soul Ring, an Arcane Signet.
Alana
As a
War Elf.
child, let's not talk about his bottom.
Okay. Moving right along.
of which,
If
you'll edit
you're
that out.
there for the activated ability, you know, you might have to look around in blue, but really I think the game changer part is as a commander. I think he's a game changer as a commander, like, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
he's that egregious in the 99, but who am I to say? Who is egregious in the 99, though, is Winota. Our next card is Winota, Joiner of Forces. Two
Oh, boy.
red-white.
What a card.
For, what is she at, 3/4? 4/4. Fantastic. When a non-human attacks, doesn't even have to be her. She can just sit there and do nothing, accrue
Well,
you
she's a
value.
human.
Yeah, exactly. So whenever a non-human attacks, look at the top 6 of your library, pluck a human, put it onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, it gains indestructible.
Free, you say.
Wow. Yeah. Burrow's card advantage. That
you
is
say.
insane.
Unheard of.
She's
yeah.
crazy.
She's really nuts.
Better than Talia.
Yeah, I have her in my Mardu Humans list because it is led by Trin and Silvar. Silvar, notably, not a human, triggers every turn
Big
if I
facts.
wanted to. And this effect is really fun. I enjoy this effect a lot. I like looking at the top X of my library and finding something and putting it onto the battlefield. That is why I include her. The indestructible part is a little bit worse for where it's like, that's where the
Yeah.
card gets a little pushed. But for this effect, like I just said, Turn Timber Symbiosis in green, 7 mana, do that once. Not quite the same. The 2 replacements that I think are actually solid replacements, the first one is Dejere and Hazoret.
Ooh, yeah.
Dejere and Hazoret have very similar text, but I believe they fetch legendaries to hand,
Or
not to the
planeswalkers.
battlefield.
yeah.
And they don't give them indestructible. So not as good. And then the second one is Elspeth Resplendent. So this is a planeswalker, 3 white.
Take the Planeswalker pill.
Yeah, no, her plus puts a +1/+1 counter, and I believe it's a flying, vigilance, or
Lifelink.
lifelink counter on something, which is pretty good as a +1 goes. But the -2 or -3 is collected company text, so it's basically the exact same. You look at the top X of your library and find something that fit the criteria and put it down. The fact that Elspeth allows you to do it repeatedly is, I think, where it's at.
Yeah.
Winota allows you to do it repeatedly just by attacking, and Elspeth is not going to be quite as fast. I think you're only going to get to do this like every other turn if you're lucky and your pod doesn't hate Elspeth off the table.
Who could hate
But-
Elspeth?
Yeah, I think she's the only one for repeatable that, you know, you get to keep everything. And then the last card is a pet card of mine. It's Fireflux Squad. Now, for everybody who doesn't know what this card does, when it attacks, you get to, it's a human for 4 mana. when it attacks, you get to exile another creature that is also attacking. And you get to polymorph out the top of your library. It comes in tapped and attacking. So this is the closest I could get to Winota text. And it gets rid of the thing that's attacking with it.
Yeah.
So it is just a little bit more restrictive. I love this card. I love attacking, exiling a token, flipping a real card off the top. It's just so much fun.
He's the polymorph
but it's
guy.
just not as good.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is exactly like what this discussion is, right? It's
For
like,
sure.
how do I do this effect in a way that like feels the same, but is not as oppressive?
Yeah.
If I wanted to downgrade my deck because I want it to fit in like a bracket 3 specifically or a bracket 2.
For sure.
And I would say, like, Kali of the Vast is probably pretty close, but you can't replace it in the 99 because you have to add an additional color for it. And then it also is limited to just 3 creature types.
Yeah.
And doesn't give them indestructible, though they
True.
do come in tapped and attacking.
Yeah.
Yeah, the indestructible thing, saving the thing that comes in, is like so unique. Like,
Yeah.
You just
It's
can't get around that.
So
crazy.
good, too.
Yeah,
Because it definitely
a little
changes what
busted.
you'd be willing to
Just a
pull off
little.
the top.
It's a little busted.
absolutely.
A little.
For
Yeah.
sure.
And if you switch your deck to maybe Jeru and Hazaret or what have you, or then you can avoid that conversation. Like, no, it's a fair Winota deck. It just makes it all easier.
No one's gonna buy a fair Winota deck. Like no one's gonna buy. Oh, this is my fair Urza deck.
My fair tracks a deck.
My fair Tergric deck.
Hey,
Yeah.
my Atraxa and Tergric decks are very fair, and I can
is
almost get
propaganda.
through this sentence
what
with
they
a
all
straight
say.
face.
Speaking of that, let's talk about Grand Arbiter Augustine IV. It's not stacks, guys.
Another
Don't
super fun
worry,
card.
Don't worry. So I'm talking about Grand Arbiter Augustine IV. 2 white and a blue for a 2/3 human advisor. Your persistent petitioners decks going crazy with this one. So white spells you cast cost 1 less. Blue spells you cast cost 1 less.
Oh, all offside.
Spells your opponents cast cost 1 more. Oh, you know how I kept saying, like, these cards don't exist? This is 3 different cards
Yeah.
stapled together.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, the first 2 effects can easily be come across in the medallions. Pro Medallion,
Yep.
Sapphire Medallion. That's easy. It's the same exact text. 2 mana. White spells cost 1 less. 2 mana, blue spells cost 2 less.
Yeah.
Or 1 less. So, the real hard part is getting your opponent's spells to cost more. And that's where I feel you can really have some, leeway in looking for replacements.
I was so worried you were going to say the word fun.
Speaking of fun, the first card I'm talking about is a Tax Collector
Let's
from
go.
Assassin's Creed.
Oh.
So Tax Collector is a 1 and a white for a 2/2 human advisor. Talk about persistent petitioners now.
Oh, brother.
So when Tax Collector enters the battlefield, choose 1. Tax. Until your next turn, spells your opponent's cast cost 1 more to cast. Hey, we found it! Or Arrest is detain target creature and opponent controls to detain until your next turn. That creature can attack or block and its activated abilities can't be activated. You're always picking Tax, by the way.
Are you sure the card isn't Azorius? Because it reads like
It-
Guilds of
yeah,
Ravnica.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It looks like a Guilds of Ravnica rare.
It does.
Or mythic. So yeah, this and it is until your next turn. But I mean, it is 1 for 1 the text you're looking for. So it definitely is, I think, a shoe-in to be replaced. You know what I mean? You can sub out your Grand Arbiter for your 2 medallions and your Tax Collector.
Yep. Yeah,
so
that's
we're making 3 cuts for our 1 commander and need to find a new commander. But one other card that I want to bring up is, Planeswalkers, is Dovin Hand of Control 2 and an Azorius hybrid for a 5 loyalty legendary Planeswalker Dovin. Artifact, instant, and sorcery spells your opponent's cast cost 1 more to cast. -1 until your next turn. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target permanent and opponent controls. So a very, very mini baby fog for 1 permanent and a taxation, like a swan song taxation.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I feel like we've said before, the commanders on the Game Changers list come at a very steep cost if that
Yeah.
is you're looking to replace it as your commander. For Azorius, there is not a commander that does what Grand Arbiter Augustine does. And if you want to look for that, Brago, maybe, you know what I mean? So if you're looking, if Grand Arbiter Augustine's in your 99, I'd suggest just take him out, put it into Tax Collector.
Yeah.
It's simple, it's what you're looking for, and then slap in the 2 medallions that are probably already in your deck, and then you're off to the races with making the table, being the tax man, being the fun police, the cop, the Drago controller, the Drago player. So.
All right, that is our multicolored cards, which means we only have one more category left, and that is our colorless cards.
Ooh, we love colorless cards here. Well, I do.
Notably a very tough.
Yeah.
This is where
category.
things get from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
You know.
It's just like these are things that you can slot in any deck, and you can slot them in for a variety of reasons. And I tried to stick to mostly colorless includes. So first up, we have Ancient Tomb. It's a land. Add colorless. Ancient Tomb deals 2 damage to you. So no drawback other than the life damage, which is mitigated by commander having 40 life.
But we got a pretty easy include recently.
We did. With Ether Drift, we got Muruganda Raceway.
Woo, let's go NASCAR, baby.
Amen.
NASCAR, baby.
F1 season starts this month.
Oh boy.
Start your engines, add colorless. Max speed, add colorless. So it's not going to ramp you on turn 1.
No.
It's just not going to do that. But maybe turn 4.
Not many lands do automatically ramp you. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is the least amount of opportunity cost that I could find that you could get to colorless mana for.
Yeah, without having to do the horrific mulligan dance of putting Temple of the False God in your deck.
Great point, Ryan. My next card
would be turn 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, soonest would be turn 4. My next card is Temple of the False God.
Let's go. Wait.
Let's go.
Actually, no.
you can get it online sooner.
So you could get it at turn 3. If you drop Muruganda Raceway, you were the first one, and someone had a fetch land. You could get.
And they crack it on your turn.
Yeah,
would
if you're
have
the
to crack
second,
on-
if you're the second player, they
Oh my
play
God.
a fetch.
So I figured this out with Vinwixt.
Yeah.
Muruganda into Ginger Brute, and you hit, and you're
Yeah, there you go.
Okay,
you're
yeah.
at 2.
Muruganda Ginger Brute.
So I gotta put Ginger
So
Brute on.
turn 3.
That's your Ancient
you
Tomb
would still
swap.
have it on turn
Muruganda Ginger
because
Brute.
max speed is 4.
That's like me with like Grand Arbiter. I gotta put 3 cards.
So earliest you
No,
can
it
get
works.
it.
It works.
Earliest you could get it is turn 3. But that is unlikely. You'll probably get it 4 or 5, maybe 6, depending on how aggressive your curve is. So there's also Temple of the False God. It's a land. Add colorless, but it doesn't end there. Activate only if you have 5 or more lands. So this is pretty easy to turn on in a green deck, a little bit harder in other decks. But it could get you to that mana. You guys already know about this card. Now, if you're a very aggressive land strategy and you really wanted Ancient Tomb for some sort of ramp package, there is some synergistic lands that you need to synergize with your graveyard. So there's Crystal Vein. So add a colorless to your mana pool, or tap, sacrifice Crystal Vein, add 2 colorless to your mana pool.
You got Gemstone Cavern in there too.
So if you have, your play a land from your graveyard synergies, if you have play multiple lands, you are a land-based strategy, you could run these. Things like, Aranis or maybe
Get Rog.
Yeah.
Lord
where you get
Windgrace.
these back. There's also City of Traders. Very similar.
City.
It does tap and add 2 colorless to your mana pool. When you play another
I was
land,
gonna say,
sacrifice
keep reading.
City of Traders.
Keep reading.
That's pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, once again, you're not going to do this unless you have play multiple lands a turn, play lands from your graveyard, your Crucible of Worlds.
Or your commander is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want your generic
Yeah,
includes, your best colorless bets are Muruganda Raceway and Temple of the False God.
Yeah.
Simple.
That's it.
Honestly, Raceway if you're aggro, False God if you're mid to late.
Yeah.
Lands, yeah.
Both if you have a 10-drop commander or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you're not, just figure out other ways to land ramp in your colors.
Yep.
Much easier in Selesnya.
Agreed.
I guess bounce lands are sort of close.
Yeah. It's tough.
But lands aren't the only thing that are colorless most of the time.
Oh
That's
boy,
true.
let's talk about mana rocks. We're talking about Chromox. Chromox, 0 mana artifact with imprint. When Chrome Mox enters the battlefield, you may exile a non-artifact, a non-land card from your hand. Tap, add 1 mana of any add 1 mana of any of the exiled card's colors. Chrome Mox is insane, but however,
all of the Moxes.
all of the Mox is
Insane.
baseline. However, you gotta to replace it, you gotta answer it with a Mox.
Yeah.
So Chrome Mox is another, like Al said, it's unmatched mana ramp. It's 0 mana. It's you just play down anything under it and get an extra mana. I mean, you could replace it. You could put in Mox Amber, put a Mox Opal.
Yeah. I will say it is still card disadvantage.
Yeah.
So if you're running it, you might really want to consider how valuable having a 0-drop artifact is.
Yeah.
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 First.
That definitely is a cost of inclusion. But yeah, you could Mox Amber. I mean, you got a commander. It'll turn on eventually. It's like same thing with Chrome Mox. If you're in artifacts, Chrome Mox is just better than, or Mox Opal is just better than Chrome Mox.
Yeah.
So, Soul Ring.
Yeah,
Soul Ring.
pretty good. Just run Soul Ring. Like,
Soul Ring.
That's mana positive.
Soul Ring.
Unfortunately, you're already running Soul Ring, so
Yeah.
you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah, I mean, not much can replace a Mox, especially a Mox without a huge drawback, like Opal or Amber. So,
If you're in a Dragons deck, Mox Jasper.
Jasper, yeah.
Changelings, Dragons, you got it.
But yeah, so Chrome Mox, are you even playing Chrome Mox? Like,
yeah.
Mana Volt was banned. You're not playing those two anymore, you know?
All right, so next up we have another pretty tough one to replace, and that is the One Ring. 4 colorless for a legendary artifact that's indestructible. When the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. Tap, put a burden counter on the One Ring, then you draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring.
Little baby.
Okay, so you want a colorless way to protect yourself for a turn and draw you an insane amount of cards.
Why, yes, Garcon.
Sorry, got
love
nothing
that.
for you.
That doesn't exist.
So we're gonna rip through this. If you want protection, you're in white. Teferi's protection isn't a game changer yet. We'll see in April.
Yeah, honestly.
But for now, you're safe. And then if you want to run the Stasis Coffin for the protection effect, that is a 3-mana legendary artifact. To untap, exile the Stasis Coffin. You gain protection from everything until your next turn. So you can get that protection from everything effect. And this does have the slight upside of being a Rattlesnake effect where you can drop it and threaten activation multiple turns in a row. But it is more mana than the One Ring, and it doesn't draw you cards. So it is a little bit tough.
You're gonna find that it definitely a pattern has arisen of multiple cards stapled together.
Yeah.
There isn't really a good one for them.
Yeah, you
There's
can
a
break them
reason
apart.
they're game changers.
Yes.
Exactly. So now you get to make fun of me because there just isn't any colorless card draw. There's Mind's Eye. 5-mana artifact. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. This can pop off late game, but the rate's horrible. It's
With
6 mana,
Smothering
1 card,
Tithe?
7 mana, 2
yeah,
cards.
ooh,
It's just,
yeesh.
it's
It
just
doesn't get
bad.
good.
Smothering Tithe. Oh wait, that's a game changer.
If you're creating tokens, which I know you are because it's 2025 Magic, there's clues, there's treasure, there's food, there's everything.
He's not wrong.
Idol of Oblivion, 2 mana.
Oh, he's cooking.
Basically draw a card every
Oh,
turn.
he's cooking.
And late game, it can give you a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi.
Never seen that.
No,
So
I don't think you want to do that.
good luck.
Yeah, honestly.
Though, remember when all the content creators, when Lord of the Rings was spoiled, was like, One Ring seems fine.
It's 4 mana. It's a little slow.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah, no,
so,
absolutely drop dead.
Now it
insane.
shows up literally everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TLDR, good luck. But those are some good includes if you wanted to replace it for, a little cheaper. Speaking of cards that are tough to replace,
Yeah.
That's this whole section.
Great news. I'm no longer the land guy. Al talked about Ancient Tomb. So I'm going to talk about the Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale, which is also a land. Shit.
You're still the land guy.
So the Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale legendary land that does not tap for mana. All creatures have, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this creature unless you pay 1. It is $3,000.
Don't forget
Which
about
is
that part, yeah.
probably because it's an incredibly unique effect.
part of the
Here,
reserve list.
right here is a list of all the lands that do that. Here is a list of all of the cards that fit in all the same decks that do that. And then we have Pendril Mists, being the only other card that does that. Yeah, so
Pendril.
Pendril Mists is a card that I discovered for my Calamax deck. I own a copy and still haven't found the spot to put it in the deck. For 2 and a blue, you get an enchantment. Each creature gains during your upkeep, pay 1 or bury this creature.
Barry.
That's
Bury.
it.
That's an old card.
Yeah. This bad boy was printed once in Weatherlight.
Nice.
$6. That is significantly less than 3,000. Quick maths. That's it. Those are the effects. It's a good effect. The reason I liked it for Calamax is the goal is to just have Calamax. I don't really care if other creatures are on the battlefield. And if you've got multiple things to block with it, that makes my 1 attacker, 1 blocker significantly less scary.
True.
So
Yeah, Tabernacle is definitely you're not going to see Tabernacle. Tabernacle is one of those cards that's just like it's old.
It's on the game changer list because they didn't want to ban it. Like,
yeah, it's not played enough to be banned, but it is good enough that it is actively a game changer. It does change, especially in a world of tokens, how your games of Magic are played, but it is darn near a one of. The other option is a card named after it, and that was printed
Like what, 95?
97.
Yikes.
That's it. That's what we got.
All right, what about your next card?
My next card, Ryan hit a similar marker with it. I have Trinisphere. Trinisphere,
effect.
3 mana artifact. As long as Trinisphere is untapped, each spell that would cost less than 3 mana to cast costs 3 mana to cast.
Goes in Urza, baby.
It absolutely goes in Urza because you can tap it. I found a couple different options for this card. I don't know why I'm picking those up. I already know what they are. The Sphere of Resistance costs 2 mana.
Yeah.
Just spells cost 1 more to cast, which
Yeah.
theoretically is better in some cases. Trinisphere fits very well into a CDH archetype where people are casting things for free, casting very low mana spells. Sphere of Resistance says, hey, even if it's a 5 mana spell, guess what? It's a 6 mana spell. Another artifact, only 2 mana. Thorn of Amethyst is another one that I thought of. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to play. It's just another 2 mana artifact. We have Lodestone Golem. Non-artifact spells cost 1 more to cast. It's a 4 mana artifact creature. A 5/3, so it's a fairly decent sized beater. And then last, a card that I enjoy, a card that you have already seen on this channel, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. Actually, I played the other Thalia.
Yeah, you played
Yeah,
big
Thalia, Guardian of Thraben is in the same deck. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. It's a 2/1 with first strike for 1 and a white legendary creature. But it's just more stacks pieces.
Yeah.
I get play Grand Arbiter Augustine the Fourth if you want to swap in another game changer for it. But it's just a stacks piece. It's better at its CDH level than it would be at most casual tables.
Yeah.
But that's really it. It just makes spells cost a little bit more.
Yes, sir.
Next up, Ryan.
Me with yet another artifact.
Well, we are in colorless.
In the colorless
so.
section.
This is true.
So we got Grim Monolith.
Yo, who up Grim and they Monolith?
Oh
Me
my god.
right now. Grim Monolith is a 2 mana artifact. Grim Monolith does not untap during your untap phase. Tap. Add 3 mana to your mana pool. 4 mana, activated ability, untap Grim Monolith. Now, Grim Monolith is usually used in Degenerate Infinite Mana untap shenanigans. What if I told you they just made a different Grim Monolith in Basalt Monolith?
Wait a minute.
Basalt Monolith is a 3 mana artifact. Basalt Monolith doesn't untap during your untap step. Tap, add 3 colorless mana. Activated ability, 3 mana. Untap Basalt Monolith.
Yeah, but there's no way they use that one to generate.
Nope,
infinite
it
mana stuff.
used the same way.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is redundancy. So if you have Grim Monolith in your deck, legitimately just take it out for Basalt Monolith.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Sell your Grim Monolith.
Pretty easy.
Make a couple $100.
Maybe hold on to
You
that.
got one of those foil ones for a Grim Monolith. But yeah, Basalt Monolith, it's cheaper, does the same thing, still goes infinite the same way.
Yep.
In your Derevi Imperial Tactician decks, in your Emery decks, it's all gas, it's all the same thing. Redundancy, and you can also just replace it 1 for 1.
All gas, no breaks. If you're going to combo with it, you probably shouldn't be in a 2-pod anyways.
And if you're comboing with it, you have both in your deck.
Yeah.
But now, if you want to do 2 and still have Basalt Monolith, you got that now.
Yeah.
This is true. I have Lion's Eye Diamond next.
Oh,
Finally,
boy.
not a land.
LED.
Here we go, baby. It's another one of those next to no cost kind of rocks. Lion's Eye Diamond, 0 mana, artifact. Sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond, discard your hand. Add 3 mana of any 1 color to your mana pool. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast an instant.
I don't know, it doesn't sound that good.
So that's like Black Lotus, but worse, right?
Big downside, you have to pitch your hand. A lot of the decks that run this are probably either pitching their hand anyway or are just looking for gas. But 0 mana to add 3 mana is insane.
But like, what if you did Underworld Breach?
Yeah.
LED Underworld Breach?
To pair with that, I kind of put together Mox Opal, Lotus Petal are really your things there. 0 mana acceleration.
Yeah.
That's mostly it. If you're running LED, you're probably playing CDH, and you're not looking to turn a 5 into a 2.
If you're running LED for the hand pitching, you could run 1 with nothing.
Yeah, you can also run, the creature version?
Yeah.
Diamond Lion?
Yeah.
If you're really into it for the hand pitching, run that instead.
Yeah.
But you're probably not in it for the land pitching.
Nope.
For the hand pitching, you're probably in it for the sake
For
of
the degen.
3 mana for 0 mana.
My card
combos.
has the land pitching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
Yeah, the next card is Mox Diamond. I want to be
Alright.
completely honest with you. This is probably the best Mox of them all. It taps for any color you'd like. Run a basic.
it works.
Yeah.
0 mana.
That's it.
yeah.
That's the advice. That from me to you.
From me to you, for free.
Run a basic. If you don't have a basic, run an Arcane Signet. If you can't run
Wait.
Arcane Signet, run Thran Power
Jake-
Stone.
Basics only tap for 1 color. They could also just run Command Tower.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go.
Or
Crazy.
you can run that weird draft fixing land where you choose a color, you circle it before the game.
Oh,
yeah, you
yeah.
could run that instead of Mox Diamond.
Command Spire. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
something
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, my advice: run a basic.
Yeah. The God's honest is that we just don't have a replacement for that.
Yep.
If you want that fast mana, then it's a little hard to beat. If they unban Crypt, it'll be a game changer anyway. So
Yeah,
good
for
luck.
real.
It'll
They
go
already
on
said
the
Soul
list.
Ring should be on there. Like if they unban it.
Yeah, this is kind of that section where it's intentionally this way,
Yeah.
because they don't want to see that in lower bracket tiers and lower pods, and
Yeah.
that makes sense. Speaking of which, there's
A reason they only printed 1 of them.
exactly there's also Mana Vault, very similar to Grim Monolith. It's 1 mana artifact. It doesn't untap during your untap step. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can pay 4. If you do, untap Mana Vault at the beginning of your draw step. If it's tapped, it deals 1 damage to you. That's a lot of text, but it has tap, add colorless, colorless, colorless. So that is
Hey,
pretty...
Basalt Monolith stock's going up.
Yes. So if you want to replace it for the untapped shenanigans, Basalt Monolith is your guy.
Yep.
If you want cheap 1 mana ramp, it's cheating, but it's Wayfarer's Bauble. You can get your basics there and get an extra land on the field. Thran Dynamo also taps for colorless, colorless, colorless as well.
Yeah.
Drain Dynamo is an insane rec for Mana Vault.
4 mana, add 3.
Yeah.
It's slim pickings over here, but
Next is gonna say like the Hedron that.
Yeah, Hedron Archive or
6.
Dreamstone.
that
Hedron.
only adds 2. We're looking for 3. So yeah, your combos are going to be slower. Your fast mana is not going to be as fast.
But that's why they're on the game
That's
changer
the
list.
point.
It's fast mana.
It sounds like there's like a chasm between
And-
these cards and some other.
There
cards.
is a chasm, a glacial chasm, our very last card for today. It's a land. I'm taking your throne. I'm the land guy.
Me.
Hang on, I think it's 3-2. I think I'm still up.
Speaking of 2, pay 2 life. Cumulative upkeep.
No.
When Glacial Chasm comes into play, sacrifice a land. Creatures you control can attack.
You weren't supposed to riff off of that.
Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. That's why you play the card.
Disgusting card.
You can Chasm Lock the board. You can make sure that aggro ain't hurting you unless they have land destruction, which is a bit taboo unless it's targeted. So it's just easy. We're talking about your Muldrotha decks. We're talking about your Gitrogs. If you want to...
In those same decks, you can instant speed tutor up with crop rotation.
Yeah, like
speed crop.
the gross part about Glacial Chasm is that you don't have, or that you don't pay the cumulative upkeep and you just get it back for free.
Yeah, you don't have
Like
to pay
that's
that too.
the gross part.
You could go the long way around and put a Salinity in play.
Yeah.
So if you want to protect yourself in colorless, this sounds familiar. So there's this cool card called the Stasis card.
Oh my god.
Not very efficient.
Yes.
Also not repeatable. So good luck. So if you want some repeatable stuff, then you got to get into some colors. So this is the one card that I broke colors because if you want your repeatable protection, we got Spore Frog. Muldrotha.
Sure.
You're probably running Spore
Yes.
Frog anyway.
Muldrotha, you're probably also
Love
running
the
Chasm.
drop printing.
Exactly. So it's great. You can recur the frog and keep sacking it. There's also Constant Miss, probably a little bit more synergistic, right?
Yeah.
It's a 1 and a green instant. It has creatures deal no combat damage this turn, and it has buyback sacrifice a land. So you can keep buying it back if you have those land synergies. This is probably your best replacement. Hopefully you're in green, but you're playing with lands anyway, so it's a good chance you are.
It's a fog.
Noticeably only creature damage.
Yeah.
Won't save you from a goblin bombardment.
That is true.
Or,
Impact tremors.
There's your favorite fogs. So Obscuring Haze is the one that I see the most. It's a free spell, just like Fierce Guardianship, or you could pay 2 and a green for it. Prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures your opponent controls, so it doesn't protect you from Goblin Bombardment in this case either. And then if you're in white, but not green, then there's Solitary Confinement, 2 and a white. Enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Solitary Confinement unless you discard a card, skip your draw step, you have Shroud, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. So you are a little bit tough on card draw, but you're in white, you got card draw.
Yeah.
On your game changers.
We went over how to do that earlier, actually.
Exactly. So if you want that repeated fog effect, it's possible. I think this is one that if you work a little hard and you're in green, you can do. If you're not, then the Stasis Coffin will protect you once.
Yeah, it's like the only other thing is like Silent Arbiter to trim it down to just one thing hitting you, but you're still getting hit.
Yep.
So like,
Yeah.
There's
Crawl
a lo-
space.
yeah, it's not great.
Play
Space isn't
Pendulmists
bad.
and make them sacrifice all their creatures
Don't
unless
do
they
that.
pay 1 for
Don't do
them.
that.
And then you got your, if you're in blue, you got your propaganda effects,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
Ghostly
collective
Prison.
restraint.
Your pillow fort cards.
Yeah, you can kind of do it. It's just not as good. But anyway,
It's a running theme.
that is our game changer replacements. If you want
your games changed.
consider it changed. If you want to kind of tone down your deck, you realize that you're putting in some game changers where it doesn't really need to be there. You're looking for a variety. You're hopefully looking to save a couple of bucks. That could work. And just to reiterate, the whole point of this is to kind of realize, maybe these cards are a little bit oppressive. That's a very strong theme, stacks and stuff like that is common on here. These are
A lot of them are here for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
if your reaction to some of our picks are like, oh, that's a lot more expensive, or it doesn't really do what I want, that's kind of the
That's
point.
the point.
Yeah.
But it can still get you a little bit of that effect.
I think the real important thing is to really assess the cards in your deck for the intention you put it in there for, not because it's a good card, but what do you want it to do?
Yeah.
Right.
And
Because
also, don't just add game changers to your decks because they're game changers.
Agreed.
We just gave you 100 different options of
For cards
cards
that
to
aren't
replace
colorless.
game changes with.
Yeah.
But Alex,
do it.
on EDH Rec, there's a whole section for it now. I gotta add them.
But EDH
boy.
Rec also suggests non-bows for your own decks.
It's true.
Yeah. So there's a lot of great content out there that talks about the real beta of this game bracket system, and there's a big part of the art of the brackets, which is like really assessing more than just the game changers.
Yeah.
So make sure you do that as well.
Yeah.
But I think that's all we have for you today. So
Yeah.
thank you for watching. If you like our mugs, go ahead and hit the like button. Maybe leave a comment so we know you're here. And if you really love us, watch another video.
Faces on
Oh
mugs.
yeah.
Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
Say hi to your mom.